Hey there, you know that feeling when you're lying in bed at night, scrolling through social media, and suddenly thinking, is this all there is to life? Well, you're not alone. Not alone at all. You see, this feeling of something's missing has been around for, wait for it, thousands of years. And here's the cool part, about 2,500 years ago, this guy called Buddha figured it out. He didn't just understand why we feel this way. He actually found a solution. And get this, modern neuroscience is now backing up what he discovered. Pretty mind-blowing, right? I'm Alex, and I've spent the last decade diving deep into both Buddhist wisdom and brain science. And let me tell you, the stuff I'm about to share, it's literally changed my life. And I'm not talking about some woo spiritual mumbo-jumbo. I'm talking about practical, scientifically backed wisdom that you can use right now. Today we're going to explore what Buddha called the Four Noble Truths, like the source code of happiness and suffering. And the best part? Your brain is already equipped to understand and use these truths. You just need to know how. But before we dive in, I want you to do something for me. Take a deep breath. Yeah, right now. Just one deep breath. Feel that? That's you becoming aware of this moment. And that's exactly where our journey begins. You see, these four noble truths aren't just some ancient philosophy gathering dust in some monastery. They're like a user manual for your mind. And when you combine them with what neuroscience tells us about how our brains work, oh boy, you're in for some mind-bending revelations. So who was this Buddha guy anyway? Well, imagine this. About 2,500 years ago, there was this young prince named Siddhartha. And get this, he had everything you could possibly want. Literally everything. Money, check. Power, yep. Good looks, double check. The latest model of chariot, you bet. But here's the thing, despite having it all, he felt that same emptiness we were just talking about. And you know what's super interesting? Brain scans today show that having material possessions activates our reward centers only temporarily. It's like your brain gets a quick hit of dopamine and then, poof, back to square one. So what did Siddhartha do? Well, he did something pretty radical. He left everything behind. Everything. And for 6 years he went on this intense journey of self-discovery. Think of it as the world's first neuroscience experiment, but instead of using MRI machines, he used his own mind as the laboratory. And then, one day, sitting under this fig tree, which we now call the Bodhi tree, he had this massive breakthrough. It was like, imagine suddenly understanding the source code of reality itself, and that's when he became Buddha, which, fun fact, isn't actually his name but means the awakened one. The first thing Buddha taught after his enlightenment? You guessed it, the Four Noble Truths, and here's what's absolutely mind-blowing. The same insights he discovered through meditation. Modern neuroscientists are finding similar patterns when they study our brains. Like when Buddha talked about how our minds create suffering. Neuroscience shows us the exact neural pathways involved in this process. When he spoke about how we get stuck in cycles of craving, we can now literally see those addiction pathways light up in brain scans. But hey, don't just take my word for it. As we dive deeper into each truth, I'll show you exactly how this ancient wisdom lines up perfectly with what we know about our brains today. And trust me, once you see it, you'll never look at your mind the same way again. So, remember those brain patterns I mentioned? Well, they're about to get really interesting. Because the first noble truth is all about understanding something Buddha called dukkha. Now don't let that fancy word scare you. It's actually super relatable. You know that feeling when you get tons of likes on your post, but you still keep checking your phone every 2 minutes for more? That's dukkha. Or when you finally get that promotion you've been dreaming about, but 2 weeks later you're already thinking about the next one. Yep, that's dukkha too. Here's the thing. Most people translate dukkha as suffering, but it's way more than that. It's more like that slight unsatisfactoriness that's always hanging around in the background of your mind. That's what Buddha was talking about. And check this out. Neuroscientists have found something super cool about our brains. There's this network called the default mode network that's basically, get this, hardwired for dissatisfaction. It's constantly comparing our current situation to imagined better ones. Wild, right? Let me give you a real example. Picture yourself getting that new phone you've been wanting forever. Your brain releases this rush of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. But here's the kicker. Studies show that this happiness boost typically lasts only about 48 hours. After that, your brain goes right back to its baseline. Scientists call this hedonic adaptation, but Buddha figured this out way before we had brain scanners. And it gets even more interesting. Your brain is actually designed to never be fully satisfied. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes total sense. It kept our ancestors always striving for better situations, safer places, more food. But in our modern world, this same mechanism that helped us survive is now making us scroll through Instagram at 3 a.m., feeling like everyone else's life is better than ours. But here's where it gets really good. Understanding this truth isn't depressing, it's actually liberating. When you realize that this feeling of dissatisfaction is just your brain doing its thing, it loses some of its power over you. Imagine you've been watching a really scary movie, and then suddenly the lights come on, and you see it's just pixels on a screen. Still there, but not so overwhelming anymore. And get this, research in contemplative neuroscience shows that when people truly understand and accept this truth, their amygdala, that's your brain's anxiety center, actually becomes less reactive. By accepting that everything isn't always going to be perfect, your brain literally chills out. So next time you're feeling that subtle sense of something's missing, remember, it's not just you. It's not because you're doing life wrong. It's literally just your brain doing what brains do. And knowing this, well, that's the first step towards something pretty amazing that we'll talk about in the next Noble Truth. Remember that something's missing feeling we just talked about? Well, Buddha didn't just identify it, he went deep into figuring out where it comes from. And what he discovered, well, it's gonna blow your mind. Hey, quick pause here. If you're finding these connections between ancient Buddhist wisdom and modern neuroscience as fascinating as I do, take a second to hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm share this knowledge with others who might be struggling with the same things we're talking about. And you know what? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Drop a comment below, sharing your own experience with suffering and craving. What's your biggest challenge? Let's create a supportive community where we can all learn from each other's journeys. Oh, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Because in the next video, we're going to dive deep into practical meditation techniques that neuroscience has proven can actually change your brain structure. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Now, where were we? Yes, the second noble truth is all about this thing called tanha, which literally means thirst. And, oh boy, does modern neuroscience have something to say about this. You see, our brains have this reward system that's practically identical to what Buddha described 2,500 years ago. Like, it's almost spooky how accurate he was. Here's the deal. Your brain is constantly creating these mini cravings. And I mean constantly. Want to try a quick experiment? Just for the next 10 seconds, try to notice how many times your mind jumps to wanting something. Could be checking your phone, adjusting your position, thinking about your next meal. Pretty wild, right? And here's where neuroscience gets super interesting. Every time you feel a craving, your brain releases this chemical called dopamine. And this is the crucial part. Dopamine isn't actually the pleasure chemical most people think. It's the wanting chemical. Think about it like this. You're scrolling through social media and your thumb is just going up and down, up and down. Your brain isn't getting pleasure from this. It's actually chasing the next thing that might be interesting. Scientists call this reward prediction error, but Buddha, he just called it thirst, and it gets even crazier. The more you give in to these cravings, the stronger they become. It's like, imagine your brain is creating these little grooves, like a river carving through rock. Each time you follow a craving, you make that groove a little deeper. Neuroscientists call this neural pathways strengthening, but you can just think of it as your brain's autopilot getting stronger and stronger. But here's the thing that's really going to bake your noodle. The craving itself is the suffering. Not getting what you want isn't the real problem. It's the wanting itself that causes that feeling of dissatisfaction, mind blown, right? And check this out. fMRI studies show that the same brain regions activate whether you're craving a chocolate bar, a new car, or even, get this, enlightenment itself. Yep, even wanting to not want things is still wanting. Talk about a cosmic joke, right? But don't worry, this isn't some doom and gloom message, because once you understand how this whole craving system works in your brain, well, that's when things start getting really interesting. And that's exactly what the third noble truth is all about. So here comes the really good part. Remember how we talked about all that craving and wanting, and how it's basically your brain running on autopilot? Well, the third noble truth is like the best news ever. Buddha discovered that we can actually break free from this whole cycle. Now I know what you're thinking. Break free. Really? Is that even possible? Well, here's where modern neuroscience drops another truth bomb. Your brain has this amazing ability called neuroplasticity. It's like your brain's superpower to literally rewire itself. And get this, it's exactly what Buddha was talking about when he spoke about the possibility of liberation. When Buddha talked about Nirvana, he wasn't describing some magical, far-off place. He was talking about a brain state that's, get ready for this, completely free from that constant wanting cycle. And guess what? Scientists can actually see this state in the brains of long-term meditators. Let me break this down in a way that'll blow your mind. Studies using fMRI machines show that experienced meditators have literally changed the structure of their brains. The areas associated with craving and automatic pilot, they're less active. And the areas associated with awareness and contentment, they're lit up like a Christmas tree. But here's the really cool part. You don't have to be some monk meditating in a cave for 30 years to experience this. Research shows that even 8 weeks of consistent mindfulness practice can start creating measurable changes in your brain. Imagine your brain is a smartphone, and all this time it's been running this old operating system called Always Wanting More 1.0. Well, you can actually upgrade it to Content with Now 2.0. And the best part, these changes are permanent. Just like learning to ride a bike, once your brain builds these new neural pathways of contentment and awareness, they're yours to keep. Scientists call this trait change. Buddha just called it awakening. Think about that for a second. The same brain that's been driving you crazy with all its wanting and craving has the built-in capacity to be completely at peace. You've had this inner peace mode button all along. You just didn't know where to find it. And this is important. Knowing this is possible is just the first step. The real question is, how do we actually do this? And that's exactly where the fourth noble truth comes in. It's like the practical, step-by-step user manual for upgrading your brain's operating system. So you've got this amazing brain that can literally rewire itself for happiness, but how do you actually do it? Well, that's where Buddha's master plan comes in, the Noble Eightfold Path. And let me tell you, it's like the world's first brain training program. Now don't let the word path fool you. It's not like a straight line from A to B. It's more like, imagine you're at the gym, but instead of working out your muscles, you're training different aspects of your mind. And just like you wouldn't only do bicep curls at the gym, Buddha designed this path to give your brain a complete workout. The path has 8 parts, but they all work together. There's right view, understanding how your mind works. Right intention, setting your brain's GPS to happiness. Right speech, because, fun fact, how you talk literally reshapes your neural pathways. And 5 more aspects that all support each other. And here's where neuroscience comes in with the mic drop moment. Studies show that when people practice these 8 aspects together, it creates what scientists call self-directed neuroplasticity. In plain English, you're becoming the programmer of your own brain instead of just running on its default settings. The really cool thing is, you can start right now. Like literally this second. Just by understanding these truths we've talked about, you've already begun working with right view. And every time you notice your mind craving something, boom, that's right mindfulness in action. Think of it like this. Buddha didn't just tell us our brains are running problematic software, he gave us the complete user manual for upgrading the whole operating system. And the best part, this upgrade is totally free, available 24/7, and you can start the download right now. So here we are. We've just unpacked wisdom that's been changing lives for over 2 millennia, and we've seen how modern science is backing it all up. Pretty mind-blowing journey, right? Remember when we started talking about that feeling of something missing? Well, now you know it's not just you. It's literally your brain doing what brains do. But the really exciting part, you also know that you're not stuck with it. Look, Buddha wasn't some superhuman with special powers, and those monks in the brain scanners, they're not using any fancy tech, they're just using the same hardware you've got between your ears right now. Here's what I want you to do. Start small. Really small. Next time you feel that itch to check your phone, or that craving for something you don't need, just pause. Take 1 conscious breath. That's it. That's your first step on this incredible journey. And hey, if you found this helpful, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because we've got so much more to explore. Next week, we're diving deep into mindfulness techniques that can literally reshape your brain. Remember, every master was once a beginner. Your journey to freedom from suffering, it starts right now with you.